The first breakfast after my wedding ended with my husband slapping me, his mother blaming me, and his entire family insisting I apologize. They thought the story would end there because no one ever believed the woman who left. They were wrong. Within weeks, another woman came forward with the same story. My husband's own voicemail destroyed his defense, and the camera inside his mother's dining room exposed the one detail they forgot to hide. I am Marlo Quinn, and this is how a marriage that lasted less than one day uncovered years of lies my husband believed would stay buried forever. Chapter 1. The wedding was beautiful. The warning was not. Before I married Gavin Rourke, I believed he was the safest man I had ever known. I was 37, a clinical pharmacist and operations manager at Summit Care Community Pharmacy in Minneapolis. I had spent more than a decade making careful decisions under pressure. I managed controlled medications, staff shortages, frightened patients, insurance problems, and the kind of emergencies that required steady hands, even when everyone else was panicking. People often called me independent. I had a stable income, excellent credit, and a life I had built without waiting for anyone to rescue me. But independence did not make me immune to hope. My greatest blind spot was my habit of finding reasonable explanations for the people I loved, especially when the truth threatened something I wanted to keep. I met Gavin in March of 2022 at a hospital fundraising event. He was 39, a regional sales manager for MedAccess Surgical Supply. He had an easy confidence that never felt loud or forced. He listened carefully, remembered details, and made every conversation feel more important than the room around us. We started dating 2 months later. For nearly 3 years, Gavin seemed to notice everything about me. He knew strong perfume triggered headaches. He knew I forgot to eat when the pharmacy was overwhelmed. He knew I needed silence after a difficult shift, not questions the moment I got into the car. He knew I took my coffee without sugar and added only a little oat milk. Sometimes he waited outside Summit Care after my closing shift with a sandwich on the passenger seat. Sometimes he left a bottle of water in the cup holder because he knew I would have gone 6 hours without drinking anything. Those things mattered to me. They made me believe his attention came from love rather than calculation. The first warning signs never looked large enough to justify fear. Whenever his mother called, Gavin changed. Celeste Rourke did not ask whether he was available. She told him what she needed, and he rearranged his life around it. Once, he canceled an anniversary dinner because Celeste wanted him to repair a cabinet door. His father, Nolan, could have hired someone in less than an hour, but Gavin drove to Adena anyway. When I told him I was disappointed, he did not really apologize. He said his mother had sacrificed her entire life for the family. Then he gave me the same gentle explanations he always used. My mother is just direct. Do not turn a small thing into a major problem. I do not want to be caught between the two women I love. At the time, I thought he was a devoted son with weak boundaries. I did not understand that whenever Gavin claimed he did not want to be placed in the middle, I was always the person expected to move. His younger sister Tessa gave me another warning. Tessa was 31 and worked in social media marketing for a chain of med spas. She was sharp, stylish, and accustomed to speaking without consequences because Celeste usually decided anyone offended by her had misunderstood. At a family dinner before our engagement, Tessa looked across the table and said I seemed better suited to a career than taking care of a family. Gavin laughed softly and changed the subject. Later, in the car, he told me not to take it personally. Tessa says things without thinking. I remember watching the streetlights pass across the windshield and thinking that Tessa only seemed to stop thinking when the person being hurt was outside the Rourke family. Then there was Paige Holloway. I knew Gavin had been engaged once before, from 2020 until early 2021. When I asked why it ended, he said Paige had been overly sensitive. He said she tried to separate him from his family and walked away when Celeste began treating her like a daughter. He never described one specific argument. He only said Paige was not suited to a close family. Celeste told the same story with a sad, disappointed expression. She said some women entered a family without enough maturity to understand the kindness of older people. Because all of them repeated the same version, I believed it. My parents were happy for me, but my father remained careful. Warren Quinn was 65 and had retired from the Minneapolis Police Department in 2021 after years as a detective. He was protective without being controlling. My mother Elise was 63 and had retired from teaching high school. She believed in commitment, but she never confused marriage with captivity. A few weeks before the wedding, my father asked me a question while helping me carry boxes into the new apartment. When you and his mother disagree, does Gavin actually stand beside you? I told him Gavin and I had never faced anything serious enough to test that. My father nodded, but he did not look reassured. The apartment was in North Loop, a one-bedroom with a den and large windows overlooking the city. The lease ran from May 1st, 2025 through April 30th, 2026. The rent was $3,620 a month. The lease was only in my name because my income and credit qualified easily. Gavin was listed as an approved occupant. My parents gave me $7,240 for the security deposit and move-in fee. They also covered 3 months of rent, another $10,860 as a wedding gift to me. Most of the furniture had been mine before the marriage. Gavin often said we should add his name to more accounts after the honeymoon so we could become a real family. I told him I wanted to review everything first. He smiled and said there was no rush. We married on May 17, 2025, in a ballroom beside the Mississippi River with 124 guests. The room glowed under warm lights. My father walked me down the aisle. My mother cried when Gavin took my hands and promised I would never face life alone again. For a few hours, everything looked exactly the way happiness was supposed to look. Celeste was the only person who made the room feel colder. She was 64 and had worked for years as an office manager at an orthopedic clinic. She carried herself like every detail around her required approval. Whenever someone praised my career, Celeste smiled and said professional success was admirable, but a wife proved her true ability at home. When I gave her a wedding gift, she accepted it with both hands and looked directly at me. A woman entering the Rourke family needs to understand endurance more than romance. I felt something tighten in my chest. Gavin stood close enough to hear her. He did not correct her. He squeezed my hand and said I would eventually get used to the way Celeste spoke. Nolan remained nearby, looking at his phone. He was 67, a retired corporate accountant who understood every financial detail in the family but rarely challenged his wife. Whenever Celeste said something uncomfortable, Nolan found a reason to examine a screen, refill a glass, or change the subject. After the reception, Celeste came into the room where I was changing out of my wedding dress. She told me to be at the Rourke house in Edina by 5:45 the next morning to prepare breakfast for the family. She called it the first tradition expected of a new wife. I looked toward Gavin, waiting for him to say we had plans of our own. Instead, he told me to make his mother happy for one morning. After that, everything will be easier. I asked why I had to go alone. He said he needed to arrive earlier to help Nolan move a heavy table. During the drive back to North Loop, I asked whether he thought Celeste's request was strange. He said she only wanted proof that I considered his family my family. Then he added that Celeste worried I cared too much about my career and money. I asked why she knew details about my lease and income. Gavin looked toward the road and said families talked about future plans. That night, he placed his phone face down on the nightstand. Celeste called again before we slept. He stepped onto the balcony to answer. When he came back, he said everything had been arranged. At 4:50 the next morning, I woke to an empty side of the bed. Gavin was gone. He had not kissed me goodbye or tried to wake me. There was only one message on my phone. Mom needed me earlier. Please be there on time. She is already nervous about whether you will cooperate. Please do not embarrass me this morning. I read the word cooperate twice. It did not sound like something a husband said about his wife. It sounded like something people said about a person they expected to manage. I left North Loop at 5:06 and drove toward Edina beneath a dim, gray sky. Even then, I still believed that if I was polite enough, thoughtful enough, and careful enough not to react, they would have no reason to turn against me. Chapter 2. A test I was never allowed to pass. I reached the Rourke house in Edina at 5:34. The colonial had belonged to the family since 1997. Everything about it looked maintained, but nothing felt warm. The chairs sat at exact angles. The framed photographs were lined up with almost mathematical precision. Even the throw pillows looked as though no one had ever leaned against them. Near the dining room, I noticed a small security camera resting on a high shelf. A green light glowed beneath the lens. Celeste had once told me she installed the system after a burglary in 2023. She liked knowing who entered her house when deliveries arrived, and whether anyone touched things they were not supposed to touch. I barely thought about it as Gavin opened the door. He had already showered and changed. His hair was combed, and he held a mug of coffee in one hand. The heavy table he claimed he needed to help Nolan move was still standing in the exact center of the dining room. I looked at it, then at him. "I thought your dad needed help moving that." Gavin stepped aside and motioned for me to come in. It was already handled. I glanced toward Nolan, who was sitting in the living room reading something on his tablet. Nothing looked handled because nothing appeared to have been moved. Before I could ask another question, Gavin lowered his voice. "Do not start the morning by interrogating me." The words were quiet enough that his parents could pretend not to hear them. I placed my bag near the front door and followed him into the house. Celeste was already dressed in pressed slacks and a pale blue blouse. She did not say good morning. She did not ask whether I had slept or eaten. She pointed toward the kitchen. "The eggs are in the refrigerator. Potatoes are in the pantry. There is bacon, bread, and fruit. You can decide what to make." I waited for something else. Instructions, preferences, even a simple thank you. Celeste looked at me as though my silence proved a weakness. A woman managing a family cannot wait for someone to explain every step. I understood then that this was not an invitation to cook. It was an examination. I entered the kitchen and checked what was available. I decided on a vegetable frittata breakfast, potatoes, bacon, toast, fruit, and coffee. It was simple enough to prepare quickly, but complete enough that no one could reasonably complain. At least, that was what I believed. I started cooking at 5:48. The rhythm of the work helped me steady myself. I chopped the potatoes into small pieces so they would cook faster. I whisked the eggs and sliced vegetables and laid the bacon in a skillet. The kitchen filled with the smell of coffee and toasted bread. While the potatoes browned, I heard Celeste speaking to Gavin in the living room. Her voice was low, but the doorway was open. "Have you talked to her about adding you to the account and the lease?" "Not yet," Gavin said. "You should not wait too long. We will handle it after the honeymoon." Celeste paused. Things should be properly combined before she starts thinking everything still belongs only to her. Gavin said something too quietly for me to hear. I did not walk out and confront them. I turned the potatoes and memorized every word. By 6:31, breakfast was ready. Nolan came to the table first. He sat down and began serving himself without looking at me. Celeste inspected the frittata before cutting a small piece. She examined the potatoes, then the bacon, like a judge deciding whether evidence was acceptable. Gavin sat beside me. "Looks fine," he said. That was the only acknowledgement I received. No one mentioned that I had been awake before 5. No one asked if I wanted to sit down or eat. At 6:44, footsteps sounded on the stairs. Tessa entered, wearing leggings and an oversized sweatshirt. She looked at the table, then at me. "Where is my egg white omelet?" I stared at her. "Your what?" "And the turkey bacon." I looked toward Gavin. "No one told me you had a separate breakfast." Tessa pulled out her chair, but did not sit. Someone who actually cared would have asked. I took a breath. "I can make it now. It will only take a few minutes." Tessa gave a short laugh. "That is not the point. The point is that you did not think about me until I came downstairs. Celeste placed her fork beside her plate. This is exactly what I meant. A degree and a career do not automatically teach a woman how to care for a family. Nolan lifted his coffee. Next time, just pay more attention to the details. His tone sounded calm, almost reasonable, but his words placed the entire failure on me. I turned to Gavin. Did you know Tessa does not eat egg yolks or pork bacon? He looked down at his plate. Yes. The room seemed to narrow around that one word. You knew. You should have asked me last night. You knew your mother expected me to cook for everyone, and you gave me no information. Gavin frowned. You are turning a small oversight into an unnecessary argument. It was not an oversight. He had watched me walk into a test while holding the answer key. Tessa leaned back in her chair. Your parents can pay for an expensive apartment, but money cannot teach someone how to take care of a husband. Celeste did not stop her. The way a woman behaves usually reflects how she was raised. My voice remained steady. My parents taught me to respect people. They did not teach me to read minds, and they did not teach me to sit quietly while someone insults them. Under the table, Gavin placed his hand on my knee. For 1 second, the gesture might have looked affectionate. Then his fingers tightened. Stop, Marlo. I looked at him. Apologize to my mother and Tessa so we can end this. Why am I the one apologizing when you knew exactly what Tessa needed and chose not to tell me? This is not about who is right. Then what is it about? Keeping peace in the family. That was the moment I understood what peace meant to Gavin. It meant everyone else could say whatever they wanted, and I was responsible for making sure he never felt uncomfortable about it. I looked directly at him. Are you planning to spend our entire marriage asking me to endure everything you are too afraid to stop? Celeste stiffened. You are humiliating your husband in his own home. Tessa folded her arms. You have been married less than a day and you are already trying to separate him from his family? Gavin stood so quickly that his chair scraped across the floor. Take that back. I stayed seated. I did not shout. I did not insult him. You are not keeping the peace. You only want me silent so you never have to stand up to your mother. His hand moved before I understood what he was doing. The slap struck the left side of my face with enough force to turn my head. My body hit the edge of the kitchen counter. For a few seconds, there was only pressure and sound. My breath stopped. My fingers closed around the counter. Coffee filled the room with a bitter smell. The silverware went silent. A sharp ringing spread through my left ear. I looked at each of them. Celeste spoke first. Gavin has never behaved like this. You need to ask yourself how far you pushed him. Tessa had gone pale, but only briefly. He should not have hit you, but you should not have spoken to Mom that way. Nolan stood halfway out of his chair. Gavin, then he looked at the floor. Everyone needs to calm down. No one came toward me. No one asked if I was hurt. Gavin stared at me, breathing hard. Do not look at me like I am some kind of monster. I said nothing. You made me lose control. Still no apology, just an accusation disguised as an explanation. He stepped closer. Apologize, and we can still finish this morning peacefully. I backed toward the small dining table. When he continued moving toward me, I placed both hands beneath the edge and pushed. The table flipped toward the empty side of the room. Plates and glasses crashed against the floor, food scattered across the wood, coffee spilled beneath the chairs. No one was standing in its path. No one was burned or cut. I did not touch another object. Gavin stared at the wreckage. What the hell is wrong with you? I looked at him. I did not ruin breakfast. You ruined our marriage when you decided this ring gave you the right to punish me. I picked up my bag and walked toward the front door. I removed my wedding ring and placed it on the shelf beside the entrance. Celeste pointed toward the door. Do not ever come back to this house. I faced her. I was never invited here as family. I was summoned here to serve you and be judged. As I passed the dining room, I saw the green light on the security camera. Still on. I remembered Celeste proudly explaining that the system uploaded everything to the cloud. I did not know how much the camera had captured. But the room might have recorded the sound this family would soon try to deny. I reached my car at 7:14. The left side of my face was already turning red in the rearview mirror. I took several photographs with my phone before the swelling could change. Then I called my father. He answered after the second ring. Dad Gavin hit me. The silence on the other end lasted only a moment. When Warren spoke again, his voice had completely changed. I stopped explaining and started documenting. Do not go back to the apartment alone, my father said. Take more pictures of your face. Go straight to Abbott Northwestern. Send me your location and do not call Gavin. I gripped the steering wheel and stared through the windshield. He is my husband, I said, and the sentence sounded strange the moment it left my mouth. He is the man who hit you, Warren replied. That is the fact that matters right now. He did not ask what I had said before the slap. He did not suggest I calm down or give Gavin time to apologize. He treated the situation the way he had treated evidence throughout his years as a detective, as something that could disappear if I allowed other people to control the record. I sent him my location and drove toward Abbott Northwestern Hospital. I checked into the emergency room at 7:55 that morning. The woman at the front desk looked at the swelling on my face before I finished explaining why I was there. Dr. Priya Shah examined me under a bright light. She was 47, calm and precise, with the kind of voice that made it easier to answer painful questions. Did you lose consciousness? No. Any nausea, blurred vision, or dizziness? My ear is ringing and my jaw hurts. She gently pressed around my cheekbone and asked me to open and close my mouth. Pain moved from my jaw toward my temple. What happened? My husband slapped me. Saying it to a stranger made the truth feel more permanent. Dr. Shah documented the redness and swelling on the left side of my face. She checked for signs of a concussion and took photographs from my medical chart after asking for my consent. She did not call it a misunderstanding. She did not tell me marriages were complicated. She recorded what I reported and what she could physically observe. Before I was discharged, a woman named Lena Morales came into the room. She was 45 and worked as a domestic violence advocate at the hospital. She pulled a chair close enough to speak quietly, but left enough space that I did not feel cornered. Do you feel safe returning home? I do not know. Does Gavin have access to the apartment? Yes, he is listed as an approved occupant. Lena nodded. Then do not change the locks or throw out his property without legal guidance. There are ways to protect the residents, but you need to follow the process. She explained safety planning police reports and an order for protection in Minnesota. She told me an ex parte OFP could temporarily restrict Gavin from contacting me or approaching my home and workplace, but I would need documentation and a court petition. She also warned me not to empty joint accounts in panic. Preserve records before you move money, she said. Safety matters, but so does protecting your legal position. I looked down at my discharge papers. We were married yesterday. Lena did not react with surprise. That does not make what happened less serious. I keep thinking people will believe I gave up too quickly. Leaving after the first assault is not giving up. Sometimes it is how a person prevents the first assault from becoming a pattern. My parents arrived before I left the hospital. Elise stopped when she saw my face. Her eyes filled immediately, but she did not ask me to repeat everything while I was still sitting under fluorescent lights with an ice pack against my cheek. She placed both hands around mine. You do not need to return to a place where you were hit just to prove you tried long enough. Warren stood beside her, quiet but alert. He asked what Dr. Shah documented and whether the photographs were in the chart. Then he reminded me that every decision after that point belonged to me. Officer Karen Sloan met with me later that morning to take the police report. She was 41 and direct without being cold. I gave her the address of the Rourke house, the approximate time of the assault, and the names of everyone who had been present. I showed her Gavin's message from before breakfast and the photographs I had taken in the car. "There is a security camera near the dining room," I said. "Celeste told me it uploads to the cloud." Officer Sloan wrote it down. "A report does not guarantee an arrest or a conviction," she said, "but preserving evidence now gives investigators and the court something more reliable than competing memories later." Because May 18th was a Sunday, I could not complete the normal court filing process that afternoon. I called Simone Keating, a friend from college who had spent years practicing family law in Minneapolis. She listened without interrupting until I finished. Then she said, "Do not answer Gavin. Do not post anything online. Download every bank statement you can access and do not drain any shared account. I want him out of the apartment." I understand, but he is an approved occupant and you need an order or another lawful basis before management removes his access. Simone spent the rest of Sunday helping me organize the materials for an ex-parte OFP petition. We collected my written statement, photographs, preliminary medical records screenshots, witness names, and requests protecting both my apartment and Summit Care. I moved my future paycheck deposit into an individual account. I removed Gavin as an authorized user from a credit card issued only in my name. I did not touch the wedding money or empty any account we had used together. While downloading statements, I noticed several payments tied to Gavin that I did not recognize. There were credit card balances, personal loan payments, and transfers that did not fit the stable financial picture he had always presented. I saved everything without confronting him. I called Theo Marsh, the building manager at North Loop. "The lease is in your name," Theo confirmed, "but Gavin is listed as an approved occupant. I cannot deactivate his access because of a marital dispute alone. I filed a police report. I can alert security and make sure no one gives out your schedule or unit information. If you receive an OFP with housing restrictions, send it to me immediately." Gavin's messages kept arriving. "Come back so we can talk. You scared my mother when you flipped that table. I am sorry everything went too far." Then, less than 20 minutes later, another message appeared. "You know how to push me until I lose control." I did not answer. I photographed every message and forwarded the screenshots to Simone. At 9:12 that morning, Tessa posted something online without naming me. She wrote that some women used their parents' money to disrespect their husband's family, then destroyed property when someone corrected them. Bria Monroe, the 43-year-old lead pharmacist at Summit Care, saw the post and captured it before Tessa deleted it. Bria called me. I saved the full post and the timestamp, she said. "You do not need to explain anything to me. Thank you. Do you want me to notify Daniel?" "Yes, Gavin knows where I work. Daniel Kim, Summit Care's regional HR director, arranged leave for me through May 26th. He sent Gavin's photograph to building security, restricted access to my schedule, and told the staff to preserve any calls, letters, gifts, or messages. My return date was set for Tuesday, May 27th, after Memorial Day." On Monday morning, Simone filed my petition at Hennepin County District Court. I kept my statement focused on what mattered: the slap, the injury, Gavin's continuing messages, and the risk that he would come to my home or workplace. The court granted the ex parte OFP that day. The temporary order prohibited Gavin from contacting me directly, approaching Summit Care, or coming near me outside the limited terms allowed by the court. A full hearing was scheduled for June. Theo received the order and worked with security to deactivate Gavin's building access. His belongings remained inside until a supervised pickup could be arranged. For the first time since the wedding, there was a legal boundary Gavin could not dismiss as me overreacting. He still tried to reach me through work. He called Summit Care and left a voicemail for Bria. "I only slapped Marlo because she humiliated me in front of my mother. I am not a violent person. She is destroying our marriage over one mistake." Bria preserved the original file and sent it through Daniel to Simone. The apology Gavin refused to give me had transformed into an admission he gave a recorded phone system. Simone also sent a formal preservation notice regarding the camera footage at the Rourke house. She made it clear that the data could not be deleted while it might be relevant to legal proceedings. We did not have access to the recording yet. That would require consent, legal process, or discovery. But Celeste could no longer safely pretend the camera had never existed. On the evening of May 21st, I was sitting in my parents' kitchen when a message appeared from a number I did not recognize. My name is Paige Holloway. I was engaged to Gavin before you. Tessa's post reached someone who still remembered me. You are not the first woman Gavin told that she made him lose control. I stared at the screen before pressing call. A woman answered after the first ring. Celeste will claim this was the first time Paige said him, but she knows it was not. I sat at my parents' kitchen table with the phone against my ear as Paige began telling me about a night in February of 2021 that the Rourke family had spent 4 years turning into her fault. Chapter 4. The family's story began to collapse. Paige's voice stayed steady, but I could hear the effort behind it. We were engaged from July of 2020 until March of 2021, she said. At first, Gavin was exactly the man you thought he was. She described the same patience, the same careful attention, and the same way he made ordinary gestures feel like proof of safety. Celeste had seemed demanding but manageable before the engagement. After Gavin proposed, her involvement became constant. She wanted us to move closer to Adina. She wanted every holiday with the Rourkes. She commented on my clothes, my work hours, even what I ordered at restaurants. Whenever Paige objected, Celeste achieved her of separating Gavin from his family. Gavin always said the same things. My mother means well. You are taking this too personally. I cannot keep being placed between you. Paige let out a quiet breath. I thought I was asking for boundaries. They treated it like I was asking him to abandon them. On February 13, 2021, Paige told Gavin she would not move closer to Celeste. The argument happened at the Rourke house. Gavin accused her of embarrassing him after everything his parents had done. Paige tried to leave. He grabbed my arm and pushed me into the wall. The impact bruised her shoulder and upper back. Nolan saw enough to understand what had happened. He stood in the hallway, but he did not intervene. Celeste did not check Paige's injury. She told me I had pushed Gavin until he lost his temper, Paige said. Then she asked me not to ruin his future over one bad minute. Paige did not call the police. She was frightened, ashamed, and surrounded by people repeating that she had caused the incident. When she ended the engagement, the Rourkes told mutual friends she was unstable and had always tried to isolate Gavin. Gavin had already given me that same version years later. He made sure you would not believe me before you ever met me, Paige said. That was the part that stayed with me. The Rourkes did not simply hurt women who entered their family. They prepared a story that would make those women impossible to believe after they left. Paige still had evidence. She forwarded me a message Gavin sent on the night of February 13th. I am sorry I pushed you, but you know how to keep going until I lose control. She also had an email Celeste sent the following morning. You need to think carefully before destroying Gavin's life over a moment of anger. Families handle private matters privately. Paige had sent photographs of the bruising to her sister that same night. The original messages still showed their dates. I will sign an affidavit, she said. I cannot change what I did not report back then, but I can tell the truth now. You do not owe me that. I know. I am not doing it because I owe you. I am doing it because it took me years to understand I was not imagining what happened. We did not suddenly become friends. We were two women connected by the same man and the same family narrative. That was enough. While Paige prepared her affidavit, Tessa continued trying to control the story. She contacted acquaintances and attempted to reach people at Summit Care. She claimed I had destroyed property, used my parents' money to humiliate the Rourkes, and invented the assault afterward. Daniel instructed everyone at Summit Care to save the messages and avoid responding. Simone sent Tessa a cease and desist letter demanding that she stop contacting my workplace, preserve all relevant posts, and stop public. Tessa replied through a message that Simone immediately saved. Marlo knew what happens when a woman disrespects my mother in her own home. The sentence did not prove the assault by itself, but it revealed something important. Tessa viewed violence as a consequence, not an accident, not an unacceptable act, but something that happened when a woman stepped outside the position the family had assigned her. Celeste initially claimed the security camera had not been functioning on May 18th. The preservation notice prevented the family from quietly allowing the data to disappear. Information from the security provider showed the system had continued syncing to cloud storage and that the recordings would only remain available for a limited period. The footage was preserved through the proper legal process before the retention window expired. The camera angle did not show Gavin's hand clearly at the exact moment it struck me. A doorway blocked part of his body. But the recording captured the sound. It captured my body hitting the counter. It captured Gavin saying I had humiliated him in front of his mother. It captured Celeste telling me to ask myself how far I had pushed him. It captured Nolan rising halfway from his chair and saying Gavin's name. Most importantly, the timestamps showed that Gavin hit me before I flipped the table. The recording also included the conversation I had overheard while cooking. Celeste's voice was clear. "When are you getting your name added to her account?" And the lease, Gavin answered that he would handle it after the honeymoon. That conversation became more troubling when Simone began reviewing the financial records connected to the divorce. Gavin had approximately $41,600 in personal debt. $29,800 came from credit cards and a personal loan. Another $11,800 had been borrowed from Nolan. His commissions had declined, but he had continued spending as though nothing had changed. Expensive dinners, clothing, travel, and purchases designed to maintain the appearance of success. There was no document saying Gavin married me only for money. I did not need one. The truth was more complicated and more believable. Gavin may have loved me, in the limited way he understood love. He also believed marriage entitled him to my income, my credit, my apartment, and my ability to repair the consequences of decisions he had hidden. Celeste viewed me as the stable solution to her son's unstable finances. The $15,800 in wedding gifts had not yet been combined with any other funds. Gavin had discussed using that money and my credit to consolidate his debt after the honeymoon. He had not planned to ask whether I agreed after seeing the full numbers. He had assumed agreement would come with the marriage certificate. On May 23rd, Gavin collected his belongings from the North Loop apartment, under Theo's supervision and with building security present. I was not there. He discovered that the card on which he had been an authorized user was canceled. The wedding money remained untouched. The financial records had already been copied. The OFP limited his access, and he could not simply return whenever he wanted. After choosing his mother over his wife, Gavin moved back into the Adina house. It was the first consequence the Rourkes could not explain away. His lawyer later accused me of damaging Gavin's reputation, employment, and future. Simone's response was brief. The consequences your client is experiencing come from medical records, a police report, his recorded voicemail, security footage, and statements made by his family. They do not come from a campaign by Marlowe. I returned to Summit Care on Tuesday, May 27th. I expected whispers or careful looks. Instead, Bria handed me the updated schedule. We covered everything she said. You do not owe anyone an explanation. Daniel confirmed that security had instructions in case Gavin appeared. For several hours, I was simply a pharmacist again. Then, a metal tray fell in the back room. The crash made my body jerk before my mind understood the sound. Bria stepped closer but did not touch me. "Take a second," she said. I breathed until the room stopped feeling like the dining room in Adina. Then I returned to work. Before the full OFP hearing, Simone warned me that Gavin's lawyer would use the overturned table against me. "I am not going to deny it," I said. I wish I had walked out without touching anything, but he hit me first. I flipped the table toward an empty space and no one was hurt. "That honesty matters," Simone said. Nolan's first written statement claimed he had not seen the slap because he was looking down. The footage showed him standing immediately after the sound, calling Gavin's name and turning toward me as I struck the counter. If he repeated that statement under oath, he would have to choose between protecting his son and denying what the camera had preserved. In June, I entered Hennepin County District Court for the full OFP hearing. Gavin sat beside his attorney. Celeste, Nolan, and Tessa were seated behind him. Paige was not beside me. Her affidavit and records were already prepared. For the first time since that morning in Edina, Celeste was in a room where she did not make the rules. Gavin could not order me to stop talking, and Nolan could not erase the truth by lowering his eyes. The court clerk called our case. Gavin stood first. When he turned and looked at me, he still wore the expression of a man who believed everything could be explained as a private misunderstanding between husband and wife. I did not destroy them. I stopped saving them. Judge Elaine Porter entered the courtroom, reviewed the documents in front of her, and reminded everyone that the hearing concerned my safety, Gavin's contact with me, and whether the temporary order for protection should remain in place. It was not a divorce trial. It was not the criminal case. It was not a hearing about every dollar Gavin owed. It was about what happened in the Rourke dining room, and whether I had reason to believe it could happen again. Gavin testified first. He said I became emotional during breakfast. He claimed he stood up only because I was moving toward the table and appeared ready to destroy property. According to him, he reached toward me to stop me. He did not strike me, he said. He only touched my face while trying to control a chaotic situation. Simone waited until he finished. Then she played the voicemail Gavin had left at Summit Care. His own voice filled the courtroom. I only slapped Marlo because she humiliated me in front of my mother. I am not a violent person. She is destroying our marriage over one mistake. Gavin's attorney shifted in his chair. Simone placed my medical records, photographs, messages, and the preserved camera timeline before the judge. The video did not show his palm touching my face clearly, but it showed my body hitting the counter. It captured the sound of the slap. It captured Gavin accusing me of humiliating him. Several minutes later, it showed me flipping the table. The sequence could not be reversed to fit his story. Judge Porter looked at Gavin. You testified that you did not slap her. Gavin's face tightened. I was under stress. I may have made contact, but it was one mistake in a tense moment. His explanation had changed because the first one could not survive the evidence. Simone did not argue with him. She introduced the records Paige had preserved. Gavin's message from February 2021 admitted that he pushed Paige. Celeste's email urged Paige not to damage Gavin's future over one moment of anger. Paige's affidavit described the pressure she faced after the assault. Gavin's attorney objected to turning the hearing into a trial about a past relationship. Judge Porter limited the discussion, but the evidence remained relevant to Gavin's claim that he had never behaved violently before. Celeste testified next. She said Gavin had always been gentle and that I had provoked an unusual reaction by insulting his family and destroying her dining room. Simone showed her the email she had sent Paige. Celeste stared at it for several seconds. You knew Gavin pushed Paige in 2021, Simone said. Celeste answered carefully. I knew they had an argument. The email refers to a moment of anger and asks Paige not to ruin Gavin's life. What moment were you describing? Celeste looked toward Gavin. He pushed her, but it was a private matter between an engaged couple. The courtroom went quiet. Celeste had spent years calling violence private because privacy protected her son better than truth protected the women he hurt. Nolan was called after her. He said the breakfast argument happened quickly and that he had been looking down when Gavin struck me. Judge Porter reviewed the camera footage. It showed Nolan rising immediately after the slap. His head turned toward Gavin, and his voice was audible. Gavin. Judge Porter asked why he had called his son's name at that exact moment. Nolan's hands tightened together. I heard the sound. Did you see Marlo hit the counter? Yes. Did you understand that Gavin had struck her? Nolan looked down, just as he had at the breakfast table. Yes. Did you intervene? No. That single word did what months of silence had failed to do. It placed Nolan inside the event he had spent his life pretending not to see. Tessa's posts and messages were not treated as proof that she committed Gavin's assault. They showed something different. She had contacted people around me to try to influence my workplace and described violence as something a woman should expect after disrespecting Celeste. Her own words revealed the system behind Gavin's action. Judge Porter extended the OFP for 12 months. Gavin was prohibited from contacting me directly, coming to Summit Care, approaching the North Loop apartment outside approved legal procedures, or using family members to deliver messages. I did not feel victorious when the judge issued the order. I felt able to breathe. The criminal case continued separately. In November 2025, Gavin accepted a plea arrangement that placed him on probation, required him to complete a domestic abuse intervention program, continued the no-contact conditions, and made him responsible for court costs and counseling requirements. He did not receive a dramatic prison sentence. He received consequences that followed him into his daily life. The divorce moved through its own process. Simone had filed on May 22nd. Because the marriage had lasted only days and our property had not been deeply combined, the financial issues were limited, but important. I kept the assets I owned before the wedding. The apartment assistance from my parents remained my separate gift. Gavin kept responsibility for his $41,600 in personal debt. He had no ownership interest in the rented apartment. The $15,800 in wedding money was divided through the settlement after legitimate shared expenses were addressed. I did not take all of it because protecting myself did not require becoming dishonest. Gavin continued living with Celeste and Nolan. The family that expected me to absorb his debt, provide his home, and stabilize his life had to carry those responsibilities themselves. Nolan still had to face the $11,800 he had loaned his son. Celeste could no longer use my income or credit as a solution to Gavin's choices. Tessa removed her post, stopped contacting Summit Care, and agreed not to use other people to reach me. She did not lose her career or her entire life. She simply lost the ability to attack me without creating evidence and consequences. I met Paige once after the hearing. We sat in a quiet coffee shop near downtown Minneapolis. "Thank you for telling the truth," I said. Paige looked down at her cup. What I needed back then was not someone to rescue me. I needed someone to confirm that I had not imagined it. We did not promise to become lifelong friends. We did not need to. For 1 hour, neither of us had to defend our memory of Gavin Rourke. I started therapy in July. Some sessions focused on the slap. Others focused on the months before it, when I had repeatedly translated warning signs into harmless flaws. I felt ashamed that my marriage had ended before most people finished looking through the wedding photographs. I questioned whether I should have recognized Gavin earlier. My therapist helped me understand that trusting someone who deceived me was not the same as causing the deception. Recovery did not happen in a straight line. Some days, I felt completely certain. Other days, a metal tray falling at Summit Care made my body react before my mind remembered I was safe. I learned that making the right decision did not prevent grief. I learned that crying did not weaken the boundary I had set. Daniel continued protecting my professional record. Bria became someone I could call without explaining every detail. My work reminded me that I had been Marlo Quinn long before I became Gavin's wife. The divorce judgment was entered on January 16, 2026. I did not throw a party. I had dinner with Warren, Elise, and Bria. My father did not tell me he was proud because I had been strong. He said he was proud that I called him before I could convince myself the assault was not serious enough to matter. A few weeks earlier, Gavin had sent a letter through his attorney. He wrote that the intervention program was helping him understand how his family influenced his reactions. But most of the letter was still about his pressure, his upbringing, his humiliation, and everything he had lost. He explained himself more than he accepted responsibility. I did not answer. Whether Gavin changed was no longer my assignment. On the first weekend after the divorce became final, I made breakfast in the North Loop apartment. 1 serving of eggs, 2 pieces of toast, a little fruit, 1 cup of coffee. No separate meal for someone who might wake up later, no hidden preferences I was expected to predict, no one watching for a mistake. I sat down while the food was still hot. My revenge was never making Gavin hurt more than I had. It was not destroying Celeste or asking the world to hate Tessa. It was stopping what I had once provided. My home, my credit, my money, my silence, and the appearance of a perfect family. Gavin believed the slap would teach me my place in his family. Instead, it showed me the place where I should never remain. A marriage that lasted less than a day was not proof that I had failed. It was proof that when the truth became impossible to deny, I believed it. What do you think was Gavin's clearest red flag before the wedding? And did Nolan become part of the abuse when he witnessed it and chose not to intervene? Share your thoughts and stay with the channel for more stories about women who stopped protecting the people determined to hurt them.